one badass might be worth like 10 C players, you know? Like the one really, really good person is equivalent maybe of 10 C players or even 100 C players.
So we are in France, we've been snowboarding, there's some powder outside, and Dave and I decided to film a very quick podcast to provide you guys with some information. We're super excited. We're going to drink this little shot of Genepi made out of, what is it made of?
Genepi herb.
Genepi herb? Well, Genepi herb. Chin chin, thank you,
Chin
Dave.
chin, thanks Claudia.
Dave Williams is an unconventional serial entrepreneur, an investor, and the co-founder and partner of NomadX, a global community located in remote islands, villages, and cities, revolutionizing how remote workers live, work, and travel the world. Dave is a digital marketing pioneer with 25 years of experience and a digital nomad with more than 10 plus years of activity. As a digital industry leader, he built and sold 3 companies with more than $10+ million each. During his professional activity, he got many awards, including the top 10 transactions in New York City with the exit of Blink Media. In his free time, you can find him playing tennis, snowboarding, golfing, jumping off planes, traveling, discussing business, and enjoying time with his wife, Jennifer.
Dave, I've been trying to sit with you for 1.5 years, and you are so busy and traveling so much, and I never managed to make you sit down. And I'm happy that we're doing this, and I'm super happy that you can respond to some of my questions with your expertise. And yeah, here we are, so thank you.
That's great, Claudia. I'm super excited to be here, and it's been really fun being a part of your journey with your brand capital advisors and Claudia Miclaus. All the personal branding and the assistance that you provided to me as well has been really fantastic. I really love the survey that we did together and all the feedback that I got from all of my contacts, my friends, company contacts, everyone out there. And it's provided a lot of really, really good insights for me. That's really helped me in terms of my journey going forward as I'm in this transition as I kind of move along in the journey that I'm on at the moment. So thank you so much.
Yay, of course. No, it was my pleasure. So I have so many things to ask you. I think I divided this conversation into 2 parts. I'd like to go a little bit into the personal stuff, and then I'd like to go in the future of work and a little bit about culture, how do you build a company and all those things. But I wanted to ask you, when someone asks you how you introduce yourself, what's the best way for you to be introduced? How would you introduce yourself?
I really see myself as a pioneer in the digital industry. Mostly, I would say my early career was more in the digital marketing, advertising, ad tech, since 1996, 97, 98 when I launched my first company. So I really I like being a pioneer very early in industries. So it's very early in the search industry, very early in the social media, advertising and ad tech industries, and now very, very early in the whole digital nomad and remote work movement that's happening since 2016 or so.
Wow. And when you say unconventional serial entrepreneur, how do you define that?
Well, I think as an entrepreneur, you need to do things differently. I think the employees and clients have the opportunity to work with big corporations, and a lot of clients and employees like to work at big corporations or work with big corporations. But I think as a startup, you have to really differentiate yourself to attract the best talent, and also to attract clients that want to be out in front of the industry. So as a startup entrepreneur, I have the ability to be very flexible and very quick in terms of iterations, in terms of bringing new products to the market, in terms of offering leadership to our clients, also in terms of offering benefits to employees that typical companies wouldn't be able to offer. So what I try and do is do things unconventionally, much differently than they would experience at a big corporation, in a way that I wanted to experience when I was working initially at Price Waterhouse and IBM for a little bit, although I only worked for about 3 years at big, or 3 or 4 years at big corporations, but I've been an entrepreneur now for over 2 decades. So through the whole .com period, and I really see what it takes to attract like top talent and attract top clients and get clients really excited about what you're doing. And then even taking that excitement, from the employees, from the clients, from the industry, getting really involved in industry organizations, leading industry organizations, speaking at conferences, really trying to be at the forefront of the industry. Really, like, if there was a cliff where I'd be standing on the edge of the cliff, I may not be scaling down the cliff, but I'd be standing at the edge. And that's what I want to provide for the clients. I want them to get them out of their comfort zones, get the employees out of their comfort zones.
So you think that by applying these techniques that you just mentioned, is this what helped you build and also exit 3 companies?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to try and operate in the gray zone. So, there's kind of like, you can do things in a way like spammers, like we were talking about yesterday, where it could be an illegal approach. Or you could take a very conservative approach to your marketing and advertising. And that's what a lot of agencies and brands end up doing, because they're corporations, they have to go through these whole processes and legal approvals. But what we really like to do is operate in a gray zone where we're pushing the boundaries, and from a competitive perspective, put them in a position where they can be winning. And so for us at the company, it's also all about trying to win and also have a lot of fun. And not only for our company, but also for our clients. We want to feel like we're partners with them. We want our clients to feel that they are, that the clients are actually getting promoted because of the work that we're doing for them, that the clients are producing outstanding results, much better results than they would get with like traditional advertising agency. Or even in the nomad world that I operate in now, have experiences in the nomad world that they're just not going to get anywhere else. So we want to do things that are like highly differentiated, like the first nomad village that we launched in the world on Madeira Island in Ponta do Sol, which has been featured in GQ magazine, Wired magazine, CNN, Washington Post, Mirror, over 100 journals throughout the world, and attracted thousands and thousands of people, usually about 2,000 people every month to this destination. But it's because we're doing things differently in an approach that's sort of unconventional, and that's what I really like. And I like working with people that are very unconventional. So people that are a little bit differentiated. They might not be your typical person that you would think of as an employee, but I also like to work with people that are super entrepreneurial. I don't typically like to hire people that come out of the corporate world, but people that have had their own ventures before, that have been entrepreneurs or even acquiring entrepreneurial businesses.
So when you say being different and when you say unconventional and not your typical person, so how do you attract these people? You define, was it authentic? To what extent? Because I'm thinking, if you attract all those people based on an idea that you believed in, you just found the people that believed in what you believed, or how did you go around it?
Well, I like to get really involved in the industry. So I like to help lead industry organizations. I like to really participate in the industry and identify thought leaders that exist in the industry. And whether it's just becoming friends and partners with them, I'm friends, most of my friends are all entrepreneurs. I typically don't hang out with the corporate suits, the 9-to-5s, I really love hanging out with entrepreneurial people, and that's why I like and mentoring you so much, and I like mentoring other entrepreneurs, because it gives me a lot of energy in terms of really providing a lot of energy as I go forward in my career. I learn a lot actually from the mentees. I mean, usually what I like to do is I like to bootstrap companies. So I think there's so much focus these days around getting investors and getting VC investors, and maybe it was something that I was taught by my parents and my dad, and I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And it was always about trying to retain ownership of the company, not give away ownership to VCs, give away ownership to investors, because they start to control your business. So in all my businesses, I've always retained control of the business and never really brought in any investors. I've always bootstrapped it, either with very minimal financing and just growing through cash flow and reinvesting that cash flow back into the business, or as I've been successful, I've been reinvesting my money back into businesses. where I think there's a huge opportunity. And then as I get into the niche, I like to get started very early, and usually where it's when other people aren't involved in the industry, and that hands-on experience really gives me the expertise to be able to. Usually what I find is it takes about a year or so to really understand the industry. So I might have an idea, and so I try not to invest too much in the first year. And the first year is more of an exploratory phase, almost like I'm a freshman in college where you think, okay, maybe I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be such and such, but then you realize, wow, I really love business, I really love accounting, I really love marketing, you know? So I take that first year as a way of exploring the industry and really seeing where I best fit into the industry, where my skills are best matched with the industry, and where the opportunity is in the industry. And really, what I spend a lot of time doing is understanding the competitors. Like, what exactly are the competitors doing? And a lot of the competitors have already received financing. They've already received VC investments. And so they're very set on their path, where I have a lot of flexibility in my path because I don't have anyone controlling it, which allows me to find niches that they're not addressing properly, or areas where they're not servicing their clients as well, or new areas that they may not be able to have the flexibility to adapt to. And then as we get into those areas, what I try and do is attract top talent that's also very interested in those categories as well. People that I meet at conferences, people that I meet through the industry, people that I've met through maybe through the universities or the MBA program that I went through, and really hire people into the company in the early stages, almost like a garage band, you know? So I almost look at ourselves as like, we're like a garage band. You're just getting started. You know, we're not the varsity team. We're not the professional team, but really be very realistic and just realize we're a small company. And what I try and do is after the first year, figure out where we are best performing for our clients. Like, what is it that we're doing that's really unique for the clients? And then what I do is I remove everything else away from it and focus on that one niche that we feel like we're highly differentiated, but still offering some capabilities in the other areas so we're not deficient, but really focusing on a niche where we see that the other clients can't compete with us. And so from a sales perspective, then I can go in, and maybe not every client that I meet with will be a prospect. And if the client isn't the right fit, I'll usually recommend them to the right company. But if it is the right company, then, you know, it's like I can really differentiate what we're doing against what the other companies are offering, and really understanding the competition, understanding the leadership of that company, like what are their backgrounds. You know, I read all their press releases, I study their company, I meet the owners at conferences. And so that helps me also understand their business. They also understand me. I typically like to be, you know, friendly with the competition as well, because I feel like a lot of times you get a lot of we can share good information, obviously not trade secrets, and then I can take that information back, because everyone in the early stages is looking to, like, you know, it's like all tides rise together kind of thing. So as these businesses are growing, you know, we can identify a niche and just own that one category. And ultimately, when you're looking to sell the company, companies typically want to buy a business that is number one in their category. Yeah. So if we're number one in search engine marketing for retailers and e-commerce in the Southeast and the East Coast for big brands, you know, we own that category. And ultimately, as bigger companies realize they need to get into this space, they can either build or buy. And a lot of the big companies, they don't have the internal entrepreneurial expertise to build effectively. So a lot of times they'll buy is the most efficient way for them to go to market. And so that's where I typically will have a very, very quick exit. So typically most of my businesses I start and sell them within like a 5-year period.
So was that your plan since the beginning? You built a company with the intention of selling? That was the plan for...
Well, I think like most of these businesses, you should always have an exit plan, you know, but I think ultimately you should always be building a business where you're creating value, and whether that's for investors or for a sale, because obviously you want to create value in the business. So I'm always thinking, how are we going to create the most value for the business? How are we going to create the most value for the customers? Can we position ourselves in the industry? So when someone thinks about search engine marketing or social media advertising or being where to go as a digital nomad, we become, you know, we're like their top choice of places to go. Right. So that's what we're working on right now with Nomad X, is really becoming industry-leading brand for digital nomad locations throughout the world. And ultimately, at some point, depending on where we end up, I would expect some buyers to come along and really want to get into this space as it's growing super rapidly after the pandemic.
Wow.
And potentially buy the company, or if we don't sell the company, we still have a company that has serious value. And what I've found also is, in terms of creating value, is value is mostly created if the business isn't reliant on me. So as you know, as a startup entrepreneur, the business is very reliant on you.
Yes.
You're hiring people, everyone's relying on you. But at some point you make that transition where there's other people that are running and operating the business, and I'm more working on the business versus working in the business. So what I like to do is be more of an outside, external CEO. There's a lot of CEOs that are more operational and in on the details. What I like to do is work outside of the company and bring in all the top strategies, all the top ideas. I'm really strategic. I'm very good at business development. And so I try and bring these top ideas from the industry into the business and position the business in a way that we can be an industry leader and seen by the research firms in the industry like Forrester or other companies out there. When they look to the industry, we are, ultimately become the number one company in that industry. And so when a client's thinking about who to work with, they look to the research firms. And if they see us at number one, it's like hiring IBM back in the 50s. Everyone hires IBM because it's like they're not going to lose their job over hiring IBM. Well, Forrester rates us number one, or someone rates our company as the number one digital nomad company, or the number one social media agency with Facebook, or the number one search engine marketing company with Google. It's a very low risk for them. And that allows us, and also as we partner with these companies like a Google or a Facebook, or with other companies that we partner with in the digital nomad industry, those companies will also start referring people over to us. So for example, like we're partnering with Safety Wing in the digital nomad industry. Safety Wing is a leading insurance provider for digital nomads, and they have over 200,000 digital nomads in their database. So by affiliating and partnering and having really good relationships with industry partners, it's a great way for us to generate business through these other I'm like a little fish attached to a big to a big whale, basically, or a big shark in the sea, basically, where I'm just kind of feeding off their success, and as they're successful, we become more successful. And so it's kind of a win-win scenario. And then I bring that strategic partnership to the clients and to the industry, and try and really get out as far ahead and far out in front. And then as the business evolves, bringing people into the company that are even more like really, really good operators, people that are great managers. And ultimately, as you get that recognition, employees start coming to you. So the top talent in the industry, instead of me having to hunt down and try and get these people in the early stages, these people will come to me, and they want to work with us. The clients, instead of me calling clients, the clients are calling us. So I want to flip that around, instead of outbound calls, I want people inbound calls, so that's kind of what I want to do. And then in a way too, with the employees, make the employees super happy, like where they're feeling fired up about their work, they're really excited to come to the job, to the point where they're telling their friends to come work with us. And so a lot of times, we end up hiring people they have contacts with in the industry, because A players like to work with A players. So as you have A managers and you have A players beneath the A managers, even to the point where they'll sacrifice compensation to work at the company just to get the learnings from a top company in the industry, from top management in the industry. And then also incentivizing them not only through compensation, but also through other incentives as well. So that's worked like really, really well for us, I think. It's like, that was kind of like a turning point for me as I started the company, because I started my company when I was like 26, 27 years old. My grandmother always wanted me to be in accounting and business, and so that's what I did in college. And then I became a CPA, and I realized I didn't like that so much, and I went back to graduate school, and I focused on business and marketing and the internet in 96 and 97, and launched my first company in 98. But it was really all about just my passion about being an entrepreneur. I'd always been an entrepreneur growing up, and I love entrepreneurship. So it's like, for me, it wasn't even about the money. I just did it out of like a passion, or even I would say an obsession for the business, where I was just almost like a love affair kind of thing, you know, where it's like you fall in love with something and it's not about money, you know, it's like, it's
Yeah.
about like you just have
Just
such a
love it.
passion for it. And I think at that point too, that's what also attracts the clients, and that's also what attracts
Yeah.
the employees, and that's what attracts the industry, because they can see that passion in you. And if they see that you're just there for the money, they see you're just there to do the job, you know, they can see that. But if they see that you're super passionate, the employees see you're super passionate, that's what excites people, you know, and that's what I try and bring to the table, basically.
So you come from a very entrepreneurial background, and then you studied finance, and then you studied business. But why did you become so good at legal stuff?
Well, I mean, when you run a company for so long, you deal with a lot of lawyers. And so it was really nice. Actually, my first business partner, Brian Kajowski, I'd gone to graduate school with him, and we were roommates. And we played tennis together. And he was an entrepreneur. He had his own business, and we came up with this concept for my first company together. And his brother-in-law was a lawyer who graduated with an MBA and JD. And so he was our first lawyer, and he really was an amazing lawyer. He wasn't just about legal advice, but he would also give us a lot of business advice, and he did all of our contracts. He helped us with all the negotiations. He helped us with all the acquisitions. He helped us with the sale of the company. You know, any things that would come up, he was like an advisor to me. And so going through this process with and these lawyers, they're very, very smart. You know, to be a lawyer, like a top lawyer, you've got to be like super, super intelligent. And then I also grew up in a family of lawyers. So my dad was a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer. And my dad, you know, like every morning he'd wake up at like 5:30 in the morning. You know, he'd work on his legal work till like 8 o'clock, drive me to school, and then he would go into the office. You know, and then at night I'd see him come home and he'd be on the calls, and I'd be like listen to him talking on the phone like every single day in the house. So it's like, for me, it was like almost like he wanted me to be a lawyer. For me, I tried to take the LSATs, and it was like, okay, this is not for me, you know, because my dad is just super smart, super detailed, and I'm more like strategic, I'm more high level, you know, so getting into the nitty gritty and all of the legal language and all of that, you know, is not so much for me. But I learned a lot, I think, in my household, as well as just working with attorneys
Yes.
over a
So
period
you
of
were
time.
accustomed. So it was a lot of passive learning, and then you got into it when you started to be an entrepreneur. And okay, it makes sense.
And then doing
Yeah.
transactions, buying companies, and
Yeah.
you're getting advice from the lawyers. And I'd say it's like working with lawyers. You know, it's nice to work with the lawyers. And my dad always said the lawyers are always the last people to find out about what's going on. You know, because a lot of times you get yourself in trouble, and then the lawyers have to get you out of trouble. So I told my dad, well, that's probably because the lawyers charge so much money. That's why they're the last ones to know. But I always try to involve the attorneys in the process earlier, before we get in too much trouble. And so they can kind of help guide the process and advise you on how to do things in a way that's the most professional.
I very much would like to know, from your perspective, given all your accomplishments, what have you discovered in terms of sales? What is the best sales strategy? The one that keeps the customers engaged, that you keep the customers like raving fans, you know, just these people that only want to work with you. Like, what
Yeah.
is that strategy?
Well, I think a lot of times you're trying to work with companies, and everyone tries to get in there and win these big contracts early, you know. And we've done that before, but sometimes then there are these huge expectations, and then all this pressure to get the work done. And if you're a small startup, you know, sometimes you don't have the resources to really do it at that capacity. So like what I've really found is just, and whether it's with a small company, mid-size, and then even a large-size company, really trying to focus in on one aspect of their business just to get started. Even starting off on like a smaller project, it could be, I always say, like a 90-day project, and not a 3-month project, but 90 days, because 90 days seems like a much shorter than 3 months. But they do the 90-day project with us, and then it's kind of like a dating process. It's like they get a chance to experience working with us. They've given us 3 months to prove ourselves, and then we can also get experience working with them, because sometimes this may not be a good fit with a client. You know, we don't want to be working with a client that's mean to our employees, or a client that's not willing to implement our suggestions, or whatever it might be. So it's kind of like an early part of the process, and then as we get in there after the 90 days, we have a much better idea of the scope of the project. And then once we've figured out the scope of the project, then it's like entering into more of a longer term agreement with the client, whether it's for that specific industry, within that specific niche usually. And then as we kind of lock them down into that niche and we continue to do work for them, the ideal scenario is to produce like great case studies for them of the work that we've done so they can help promote themselves internally to their bosses, even to promote the work we've done for them to other divisions of the company so they can demonstrate leadership within their companies. And then we can even go in and show that case study to other divisions within the company to the point where ultimately we become the agency of record for the entire company. And so that's like where you really make a lot of money. So taking clients small, you start small, really prove yourself in a way where you know you can be successful, grow with the client, add resources, and as they continue to invest and buy more from you, really bringing in top talent also to work on their accounts. So as they get bigger, we can bring in bigger teams, more experienced teams, people that have excellent experience in their industry, and even bringing the clients and putting them on stage for us at the top industry conferences. So for us, that was like really valuable for us. So as we go to like the top industry conferences, whether it's search engine marketing, so search engine strategies was always a big one for us, or ad tech. There was a big ad tech industry event. And it was always our goal to put our clients up on the stage. Instead of me, sometimes I would get up on the stage, but a lot of times it'd be best if the client's up on the stage telling the story of what we did for them. It makes them look good for their company. And then all of a sudden, it's them giving us them basically saying how great of a job we did for them. And then from that, usually we'll get a lot of business because it's a lot of companies like to follow other companies in their industry. So ideally, if we're working with a top company in an industry, for example, we used to work with NBC in the media and entertainment business. And so as we were doing great work for NBC, all the media and entertainment companies followed. Or we're working in retail and we're doing great work for JCPenney, all of the retail companies would follow. Or we do great work with H&R Block in the tax industry, then all the other ones would follow. And that's how we would be able to scale the businesses very quickly. But we'd still have other clients. We'd have these top clients, which are like usually the 80-20 rule, this top 20% of the clients. And we have these other clients, and if we see opportunities with the other clients, or we see the opportunity for growth, then we move them into being more of a strategic account. And then as we saw the industry evolve, and the industry is constantly evolving, we would pick out like our top clients where we have top relationships with them. And we would do is, back in the day, it was like social media, or it was trying to work with influencers, or whatever it might be, how to better optimize the website using off-site optimization tactics. We would experiment with these projects with these clients, build case studies, figure out how to do it best, document that, and then start selling that through to all of our other top clients, and ultimately roll it through the whole organization. So that was a process for us to be able to expand beyond just being search engine marketing to we're doing online media buying, offline media buying, creative, whatever it might be, search engine marketing, getting into categories that other companies weren't really in, and then establishing ourselves as leaders in those categories, joining the industry boards like the mobile marketing associations, the social media associations, the search engine marketing professional organizations, the Internet Advertising Bureau, the Atlanta Interactive Marketing Association, whatever it might be, but really establishing ourselves as leaders in those categories, and then producing thought leadership pieces, producing like industry reports so the news journals like the Wall Street Journals, New York Times, all these top journals are looking to us as the industry leaders to tell them what's going on in the industry. So it's like, my dad always used to say, you're either up on it or you're down on it. There's no in between. And so for us, we wanted to be really up on all the latest trends and bringing that knowledge straight to our clients and making them look really smart, allowing them to get promoted, and also, revenue and profit-wise, really generating a lot of revenue and profits for the clients that we worked with. So really in the early days, turning these websites, which are cost centers, into revenue centers and profit centers for the business, versus just being like a static website that's there and they're spending a lot of money on banner ads and all stuff, but really implementing strategies that produced outstanding results. So we'd spend $1, we'd make $10. We spend $1 and make $5. If you spend $50,000, you make this. You spend $100,000, you make this. You spend $1 million, you make this. So for them, it's a very clear business decision. There's no ambiguity. It's like You know, it's like we're basically almost like I almost always looked at it like I always wanted to be an investor when I first went to graduate school. But when I got into digital marketing, I loved it because everything was so performance oriented. So we could invest the client's money and make them money. And that was always the goal. You know, some companies, obviously, maybe their business models aren't good or maybe it wouldn't work for them. And so with those clients, we'd usually separate from them because it just wasn't a healthy relationship. We just wanted to have clients that we worked with, that we did amazing work. We had great relationships with them. And if the clients weren't nice or they were mean to our staff, which happens a lot in the industry, surprisingly, a lot of the brands can be really challenging to work with. And so we'd let them go, you know what I mean? Because what would happen is they'd be mean to our teams and the team members would leave the company. So, you know, we had these 3 rules, fun, fame, and fortune.
Well, repeat it again.
We had these 3 rules for 360 in the early days. We said fun, fame, and fortune.
And fortune. Oh, wow.
And we
fun,
had to
fame,
meet,
and fortune.
and the client had to meet at least 2 of the criteria. If they didn't meet 2 of the criteria, they
So to
weren't
be
a good
fun
client.
or to have the money
Yeah.
or to be fun and to be famous. So to have like the
Maybe you don't make
notoriety,
a lot of money
the
on 'em,
numbers, yeah.
but it's like a great
Okay.
case study, or it's like it's really a
Okay.
great brand that's going to attract
I never
other
thought
clients.
about it that way, to have some rules for the clients that I choose to work with.
Yeah.
I always thought about the rules that we have to apply for ourselves. Yeah, it's very interesting. I like that. But when you mention about pushing the boundaries, what are you referring to?
I think just like just pushing yourself and pushing your boundaries, number one. So getting out of your comfort zone, you know. So it's like it's easy to. I think a lot of the entrepreneurs I see this day and age are just they're just sitting behind the computer all the time, you know. And it's like, and they're just, you know, they think they're going to generate all this business and stuff by sitting behind the computers, and that's fine. I mean, you spend a lot of your day sitting behind the computer, but for me, it's like getting out there and being engaged with the industry, being engaged with the industry leaders, being engaged with the top journalists in the industry, you know, writing articles for top industry journals. So it's like, I want to push the boundaries and I want to share that knowledge with the industry and be seen as that industry leader. You know, I also like to push the boundaries with clients, you know, even, or with our staff, like take them out on events and do things with them. Like maybe it's going whitewater rafting, maybe it's snowboarding here in Chamonix, you know, maybe it's just something going to a boxing class and we do like boxing training together. Or maybe it's taking our clients on we did a fishing competition that I was telling you about that we went to, and we won this huge fishing competition in Montauk, New York with one of our clients, and it was like this phenomenal thing. So it was like just doing, you know, or we would sponsor fight nights up in New York City, but just doing stuff that's like out of the box, pushing the boundaries. And a lot of the clients would think like, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. I don't like going to, like a lot of the women would say, I don't want to go to the fights. Because they're like, I don't like blood and all this stuff. And then I knew that they were the ones that were going to like it the most. And inevitably, they were the ones that always wanted to get invited to the next ones. And they'd be up in the front row taking their photographs.
Wow.
And so I always try to like also do events from a sales perspective, things that I really loved. So instead of, you know, I would do like, I love going to fight nights. So we would go to like UFC fight nights. We'd go to mixed martial arts events, to boxing events. You know, we'd do tennis up in New York City at the US Open. We'd always take clients like every night to the US Open because I love tennis. I used to play a lot of tennis. So a lot of our clients, they love tennis too. So it's like we build this bond around these passion points.
Yeah, but where did you learn that? Where did you learn that that was possible? Because I, as you know, I'm in the personal branding space, and it's a very common theme to see that clients tend to stop doing the things that they actually super love to do only the professional things, like only what's
Yeah.
demanded, you know? So for
Yeah,
example...
that stuff's all boring, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. It's like every other company is doing the exact same thing. So that's where it comes back
So
to
that-
the
okay.
unconventional. So it's like we want to do something that's unconventional. I don't want to do what everyone else is already doing. And so even like little things like up in New York City, like our sales team, like Sarah Kurtenbach now, she was like my right-hand person on the sales team. And she would, you know, take all the female clients out, even just taking them out for like manis and pedis.
What is that?
Like manicures and pedicures.
Oh, manis and pedis,
Yeah.
yes.
So they would do like manis and pedis for the clients.
Yeah.
And I thought we should have had a mani and pedi business instead of a
I
social
like
media
that.
business. But I always said we had the best nails in New York City. You wouldn't believe how much money we spend on manis and pedis. But it's a great way for for them to connect. It's
Yeah.
like and just doing things that are like really fun and
Crazy.
unique and like where the clients, where all of a sudden you're building connection around it, and it's something where you have a shared passion point. Maybe some of them don't like it, and maybe that's not a good relationship for you, because it's like
Okay.
that client may not be someone that you really feel like fall in love working with. So it's like we try and do stuff that's like here in Chamonix we did an event. It was one of the first times the second time we came to Chamonix in the winter, and we brought like our top clients here, and we sent like one of the clients up with a mountain guide, climbing to the top of the piece, and he does I forget what it's called, but the skiing where your feet come out of the skis,
Ski de, I don't know.
yeah.
I know
But
what
he's
you mean.
like really good at that.
Yeah.
Amazing backcountry skier. And so that was like super experience for him. And then for the rest of the people,
Is
like,
it downhill or I'm still there? So is it downhill or
yeah,
flat?
downhill. So climbing to the top of the
Downhill, okay.
peaks, basically skinning up the peaks and then
Yeah.
coming down
Yeah.
with the, I can't remember the name of the skis,
Yeah.
but it's special kind of skiing, which is very difficult to do. So anyway, but yeah, it was like, and we have these relationships, but not only at the lower levels of the organization, because we try and really get in good with the team members that we're working with, but also even at the executive levels. So I would take the executives out for like amazing dinners. We would do amazing events with the executives, and really try and to the point where they're recommending us to their friends, because they're all part of a business network. So if they really like working with you, like if I really love working with Claudia, in your business,
You have to, it's not a question, it has to be a statement.
yeah, then it's like word of mouth is where it's all at. So it's
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if I have a client that wants to work with us and I can give them referrals, like if I send them the top contact at Facebook, well, what do you think of Nomad X, or what do you think of 360? What do you think of Blink Media, which is the social media company, or Google? What do you think of 360i, which is my search engine marketing business? Or I send them to our clients, and the clients are saying great things. The search engines, the social media companies are saying great things. Then it's a no-brainer, and I can close the deals. So by having these great relationships, these great partnerships, everything lined up, then at the end of the day, it makes it very easy for the client to do business with us. Having top ratings with the research firms, like I was saying, and the clients really have fun working with us. Where it's like it doesn't become a job. It's like, okay, they're getting promoted, they're having fun, they're doing great work. They're learning stuff, so it's like, and the employees are learning stuff. They're working with great clients. The clients are really fun to work with. And that's not always the scenario, obviously, because you do have clients that are bad clients. I mean, definitely that's a percentage of your relationship. And you have to deal with that as well. And that's where maybe you get into the legal situations, or even employees that don't work out. You need to let them go. And, sometimes the employees, they get, very upset about the situation, and all of a sudden got to deal with legal issues related to it. So there's a lot of like legal stuff that's involved in how you approach these situations to handle it in a way just to try and keep the situation as calm as possible and as professional as possible, versus getting into like a heated situation and ruining your reputation in the industry. So
I want to get into reputation, but not right now, as I have a previous question. But I know last night when we spoke, you mentioned to me the word speed.
yeah,
Do things fast. Get rid of people fast if
Right.
they're unperformant or based on what? Can you share a bit about?
yeah. So I
the
think that's a
speed
part of
part?
being a startup. It's like, okay, so we're like, if we're in high school, we're the varsity team. We want to go to college and be like, we want to be the number one high school team. Then we want to be the number one college team. And then we want to be the number one professional team. And I always tell the team members, I'm going to take you to the Super Bowl. Not really take you to the Super Bowl, but actually like
Yeah.
in business, take you to the Super Bowl of business
Okay.
and win the Super Bowl of business. But to win the Super Bowl of business, if you don't have good team members, and if you don't have the right clients and everything in place, then you're not going to win. So it's like, if you, and the typical thing is the team members see it first. So if there's an employee that's not good and not performing, usually like I'm typically the last one to find out. So they see it first.
Digital nomads, the future of work. Where do you see the future of work? Where are we going?
I think that's like everyone's curious in terms of what's next.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, every company is a little different. You know, every industry is a little bit different. But I think we're going through a major, like, global revolution at the moment, because of all the technology and also because of the pandemic. All the technology's essentially been in place for the last decade, but companies haven't been adopting it in a way to enable remote work in the way that they have been recently. So what I see is, you know, from our companies, we're always able to work remotely. So I've been working remotely with Nomad X since 2016. With my previous business, we were always working out of co-work spaces. We allowed remote work. You know, like even when I started my career at Price Waterhouse, I worked remotely out of Delaware. You know, so
Wow.
it's like
And
even
that was
dating
many
back to
years ago.
1993. Yeah, so it was like really, really long time ago. That was like three decades ago. Yeah, so the future of work is like what I see happening is, I mean, some companies are more office based. So I think you're going to have some companies that like to work out of the office, and that's the old traditional way. So I think people went to the office because that's where all the papers were in the office. That's where all the computers were. That's where all the servers were, you know. And then this new cloud-based environment happened. So instead of being in the office, like we adapted to being in more co-working spaces or being in accelerators, and then where all the information is kind of in the cloud. So, but still some papers, you know. This is like back in like 2008 to 2012. And that nowadays, you know, everything's pretty much in the cloud. You know, and then you've got the adoption of smartphones. You've got the adoption of all these different applications that you can use to manage work. So whereas I think in the past, work was always associated with you work 5 days a week, you work 9 to 5, you put in 40 hours a week 40 hours of work per week. And that was the standard. But I think now what we're leaning towards, I think this is where the direction's going, and this is where my business partner, Gonzalo Hall, is not, he's just got ranked the #9 influencer in the world in the future of work.
Wow.
So he's probably the best one to talk to, but this is kind of me interpreting his vision as well as kind of layering in my vision on top of it. But we really see the hybrid model not working, you know, where people go in the office 3 days a week, at home 2 days a week. People, what employees want, and we really see, the top employees, and these are like the badasses that you want to hire, not the C players, but the A players. The A players all want autonomy, you know, because they're badass. They get a bunch of stuff done, they get it done very quickly, and they want to be compensated for that. So to have those people on your team, because one badass might be worth like 10 C players, you know. Like the one really, really good person is the equivalent maybe of 10 C players or even 100 C players. So the autonomy is really, really important. And so that means being able to be autonomous in terms of, you know, when you work, how you work, being able to kind of like have a schedule that where you have the autonomy to be able to go to the gym or be able to work remotely in a remote destination, to be able to work in the office if you want to. I mean, I think ultimately there'll probably be some level of requirement. Maybe you have to work 6 months out of the year in the office, or 3 months out of the year in the office, or whatever the number of days are in the office. And maybe those are some for some corporate meetings, or maybe that's for some team meetings, or whatever it might be. But the rest of the time, you know, pretty much flexibility to do whatever you want. And so I think that's like really the future. And then also what I'm seeing as well is it just around how people are compensated. So if you're not compensated by the hour, how do you get compensated? Well, nowadays we have all these different applications like the Asanas and different applications where you can break down the delivery of a project into smaller projects. And so essentially what you're doing is you're taking a task from Asana, you complete the task in Asana, you know, that task gets approved, and then it gets deployed in the technology or whatever segment of the business that you're in. And what I'm seeing is that instead of people being full-time employees of the corporation, I think you're still going to have full-time employees, and maybe some of the executives are full-time, and some of the people. But I think a larger percentage of the employees, or the larger percentage of the talent in a company, are going to be freelance talent with a lot of flexibility, and they might even have multiple companies that they're working for. Maybe not in the same industry, maybe not for competitors, but where they're getting compensated based on the projects that they're delivering. So when they pull a task off of Asana, you know, they complete the task. That task gets completed, the manager reviews it, they approve it, it gets implemented into the code, and they might even rate it, maybe a 1 to 5, and then based on that, you're getting compensated. But instead of getting compensated bi-weekly or monthly, you get compensated real time. So I think moving, like this is kind of coming down to speed. So as you do more and more work, you get compensated quicker. So if I'm a digital nomad, I'm a remote worker, and I want to work 80 hours in a week, it's like if I work 80 hours in 1 week, for example, but I get compensated and I do a lot of work, then maybe I don't have to work at all the next 2 weeks, because all I'm doing is just pulling projects, completing projects, delivering it for the company, getting rated on that work. Very similar to how an Uber driver works, but in a much more sophisticated manner. So the Uber driver is not working for a manager, they're working for the technology saying, pick up someone here, do this task. Once you complete the task, you get paid.
And you mentioned yesterday in our conversation something related to the quiet hiring when someone works for multiple companies at once. What is that all about?
There's kind of two aspects to it, is kind of the quiet firing, quiet hiring. But I think ultimately it's where
and quiet quitting.
quiet quitting. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about. But yeah, basically where an employee has multiple jobs. So you're seeing, actually, I think what you're seeing a trend in is where remote workers work for one company, and that company doesn't even know that they're also working for another company or working for another company. So they might even have 3 companies they're working for, 3 full-time jobs as remote workers, getting paid 3 salaries. And then if the company finds out and they don't like it, they just leave the company.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I don't think people are just going to be dedicated to one business.
So there's no limitation to as many contracts you can have as a digital nomad. You can just sign up with as many companies as you want.
Well, I think in the future, yeah. I mean, I think they're already doing that. I mean, it's like as you as a consultant, you work with multiple businesses, right? So that's like the model going forward, where you could work with multiple clients, multiple agencies, and so everyone kind of takes on more of like a freelancer role, but instead of having all of your eggs in one basket for one employer, because there's no loyalty from the employers. I mean, maybe in Europe they give you 3 months notice. In the U.S., I mean, you might get no notice. You might get paid 1 week exit. You might get paid 2 weeks exit. You might get paid a 2-month exit. So it's like the employers, as much as they say you're valuable to the company, at the end of the day, when they have to tighten their budgets, there's no loyalty. So it's like, I think for the employees, why should the employee be loyal if the employer is not loyal? So it needs to be kind of a balanced equation. So that's what I see as going forward, is that people aren't going to be companies aren't going to be as loyal to employees aren't going to be as loyal to the companies. The companies are really going to be fighting for talent, but instead of fighting for talent at a geographical level, if I have a business in New York, I'm hiring New York people. I'm in Atlanta, I'm hiring Atlanta people. But nowadays, it's like you could hire on a regional level. You could hire within a certain time zone. So I think it's good for companies not to get too global, because then everyone's in a different time zone, but we have complementary time zones where I can work in Portugal and I can work with the US. When I'm working with the US, I'm taking calls in the afternoon instead of the morning. So it's just based on like whatever the employee wants. Maybe they like morning calls, maybe they like afternoon calls, maybe they like working in the evening, maybe they like working in the morning. Maybe some people, they like working all night long and then sleeping all day. It's like whatever you want to do. It's like whatever you're most productive. But I think companies ultimately, they need to bring the employees back together once in a while.
Give me a very short answer to the following question. Did you ever compete on price while you were building these companies and the agencies that you have built? Is that doable?
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, you always want to be delivering value. So you want to be pricing your services around value. So I think at the end of the day, if you really want to be a successful company, if you're only competing on price, then it's a race to the bottom. Because your margins are getting deteriorated, and then you're in a saturated industry. In the early stages of an industry, you can actually charge more for the services because there's not as many competitors. And if you're the expert and the other guys aren't, you can charge more. So it's like, so that's why I always think it's important to be focused on a niche, because as a niche player, one is you're going to close more deals, there's more opportunities, you're going to close more deals, and you're going to be able to charge more for it because you're the expert at it. Whereas if you're a generalist, it's kind of a race to the bottom because all the generalists are competing against each other, and the clients are forcing the prices down because everyone's offering something very similar. So it's like, I think the specialization becomes very important, but I do think like to get into a client, sometimes it is important to get in there and actually be price competitive just to get yourself into the equation. Once you get into the equation, then you can start raising prices once you've demonstrated your competency, especially if you're a startup and you're just getting started. Sometimes you do have to do that. Like that's part of the early stage process. It's like, okay, maybe you have to do things that you don't want to do, or you do projects that you might not take on later down the road. When you're getting started, sometimes you have to take those projects on because those projects are going to enable you to get to that vision that you have for the future for those bigger clients. But sometimes it's like a necessary evil to have to do things, you know, that maybe you didn't want to do or not are in your vision, but it's like just to pay the bills, to be able to pay the employees. But then as you start to evolve the business and you gain focus, but by working with some of these projects and you learn a lot too. So even though you're not making as much money, you're learning. So as you're learning, you're gaining value. So it's like, although you're not making as much, you're actually gaining value. So there is like a value equation there, you know. So it's like, okay, Claudia, okay, I'm worth $250 an hour, but I'm charging, maybe I have to go out and I have to charge $50 an hour, but you're gaining $200 in value every hour that you're working because that's experience you're gaining for the next clients. You can charge them the $250, you know.
Yeah. Speaking about that, let's speak about fuck ups.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm interested to know two things. One, what was the number one fuck up or the number one thing that you had to unlearn in all this experience that you had? What is the one thing that we can take away? And it's a mistake that you would not do again.
Yeah. Well, I think like with fuck ups, it's kind of like you're always going to fuck up. So it's like that's just par for the course in business. If you're not fucking up, you're not moving
doing
fast enough. You're not, you know, you're not innovating enough. So it's like that's going to be part of the process. But it's also like what you don't want to do is have major fuck ups where you're jeopardizing your business. You're jeopardizing a relationship or something.
Right.
And that happens, like actually with a lot of companies, even like Wachovia, for example. Wachovia, this huge bank in the US, you know, they were recognized. I mean, they ended up in the financial crisis going out of business and having to merge with Wells Fargo. You would never think, or Lehman Brothers, like they did things that they shouldn't have done, you know, and they made major fuck ups and the whole business was sacrificed. So, you know, so those are the things like I like to say is like, you don't want to jeopardize the company around decisions you're making. So if it's a really big thing that's high risk, very high risk, it's good to take high risks, but you have to be really confident that high risk isn't going to destroy the whole company, you know. Especially if you're like a solo entrepreneur, you don't have VC investors. I mean, sometimes the VCs will push you to do stuff like that, and then the businesses they go out of business, and that's usually what happens, you know. But as a solo entrepreneur, and it's bootstrapped, and it's your own money and everything else, you want to be careful about doing things that could jeopardize the whole business. And sometimes that does happen to companies. Like in my business, in the media business, like some clients, they get media dollars that come in, and instead of like using the media dollars for the media, they start using the media dollars to cover operational costs. And then when they got to pay the media companies, they don't have the money to pay the media companies, and they go bankrupt, basically. So it's like, in my business, it was always important to have separate media account, and you never mix the two accounts. It's kind of like these guys at the crypto company. What is it? The most recent one with that Sam Fried.
I know what you're speaking about.
Yeah.
Let's get into fuck ups on personal branding and reputation. Reputation is a word that you have used multiple times throughout this conversation, and I want to understand, how do you see reputation? How important is to build your reputation as an entrepreneur, as you're building a company, especially if you plan to have an exit? Take me in that land.
Well, I think like some people like for example, my dad, like he's a lawyer, so he's always wearing a suit. He's looking very professional and he's very polished, you know. But for me, it's like I'm in the advertising business. Like I don't want to wear a suit to work every day. Like that was like the opposite of what I wanted. Yeah. So for me, it was like, okay, I want to have like long hair. I want to be pushing the boundaries. I want to be like really doing stuff that's like out there with clients, you know, like. So for my reputation, I want to be seen as like a little bit like not like, I don't want to be seen as a suit, you know, like I don't like in my industry groups, I don't like to have the suits there. I want to have people there that are like unique and they've accomplished a lot of things and they want to have fun and they want to do all this stuff. They're not just the corporate guys, you know. Yeah. So
did you ever see any entrepreneur that had a major fuck up and the reputation was destroyed. Did you ever see a situation in which someone that had that experience that were able to come back and rebuild a reputation? Do you think that's possible?
I think, yeah, with the reputation, I think it's like, you know, entrepreneurship, there's a lot of highs and lows, and there's a lot of like, you're not always successful as an entrepreneur. Like you're gonna go through periods of success and you're gonna go through periods of being unsuccessful. So I think what really defines entrepreneurs is not necessarily how well you do when you're successful. It's really what you do when you're unsuccessful. You know, it's like almost like I play a lot of tennis, or I used to play a lot of tennis. But like if you look at a guy like Roger Federer or Rafa Nadal, for example, they're not defined like they can kick someone's ass in tennis, no problem. But when they're down and they come back and they win, you know, that's what defines success. So for me, it's like, okay, someone, if they're in a down period or the industry's in a down period, how do you handle the down situation? Because it's how you handle the down situation that defines you. So when we went through the dot-com period, we lost like 80% of our clients in 2 weeks because they all went out of business. And so basically we had to come back from that. And then through that process, we also had to let go like 80% of our employees. So you can imagine what it's like to be an employee at the company and like all your friends aren't there anymore. You're thinking you're going to potentially get fired from being at a company that was amazing. So you think of these companies right now, like the Twitters and the different companies like the Googles and the Facebooks, and they're laying off all these people, the Airbnbs, you know? So it's like they're like these great companies and everyone's family, we have this great culture and all this stuff, and next thing you know, you're just laid off like that. And then the employees are like, well, what is it about this culture, you know? So it's like, so then you got to rebuild the culture, you know? And rebuilding a culture is like virtually almost impossible, you know? Because it's like once everyone's down, everyone's looking to leave the company because they're like, well, this company doesn't value me. They're not following their values of the company. It's not the company I thought I worked for. It's almost like being with a partner that's cheating on you. You're like, okay, I'm with this partner and this partner told me all this stuff and now they're not living up to it. Do I want to stay with this partner or not, you know? And so some people, maybe they will stay with the partner and they believe that they'll change. Some people feel like, well, you know, I'm going to go somewhere else. They're going to pay me more money. It's going to be more security, blah, blah, blah. They have a wife. The wife's like, well, what's going on? You're going to lose your job. We have a family. So I think like making the comeback is not easy, but I think the best entrepreneurs, that's what defines them. Yeah. So how you come back from a reputational issue. And a lot of people can't return from that.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, yeah, like I've always like my reputation, I try and maintain like, you know, like I don't want to, I'm not looking to have the most polished reputation. I want people to kind of like think that I'm a little bit out there. I want people to think like, you know, who is this guy Dave? How is he accomplishing all this stuff? And you know, I want to be like kind of like seen with the employees too as being kind of like irreverent a bit and pushing the boundaries a bit. Maybe having maybe a little bit too much fun sometimes. Maybe doing a little too much fun with clients, but doing stuff in a way that like if they were working with a traditional client or the traditional company, it wouldn't be that way. So it's like, okay, cool. Like this company is like, is more open-minded, you know, it's like letting me be myself a bit more. It's letting me actually have a little bit of fun. It's letting me be myself a little bit more. I don't have to look like everyone else in the company.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that's a very positive note to end on.
Okay.
But before I end, I just want to thank you publicly for all the help that you provided me with and all your expertise. Really, thank you for that. It made a major difference.
Okay, thanks, Claudia.
Thank you for that.
Awesome.
Thanks, Dave.
I appreciate it. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, thank you so much. And with that, another conversation with Claudia is over. Please do subscribe to the channel. Please put your comments in the section below. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.